Kevin Donnellan wasn't expected to live more than 3 months. Thalidomide had left him without arms or legs.
It's a scratch, didn't it?
Well, I bought a new one, a softer one, eh?
The day after Kevin was born, the drug was banned. World in Action has followed Kevin since he was 11. Today, he's 34, and the money he thought would support him for life is under threat.
When we were first compensated, no one thought that we'd be independent, that we'd be driving around in cars, that we'd be living on our own. You know, no one took that into account. They thought we'd be in hospitals or in homes for the rest of our lives.
People really didn't expect them to lead such successful lives. Because of the resilience of their spirits, because they've gone on to lead normal lives and marry and have children, their needs have grown. I think it's partly that they're victims of their own success.
Right. I used to ask about the baby, how he was, and used to say he was doing fine, but they didn't really hold much hope of him living anyway, because they thought he would have about 3 months to live at the most. Right, Kev, come on, here we go. We'll have to hurry a bit this morning because we're a wee bit late, okay?
We're always late for school.
I know we're always
Thalidomide was given to pregnant women as a sedative. In Britain, more than 450 children were born with severe disabilities before the drug was banned. For many years, the families received no compensation. Then Kevin's parents and 61 others sued distillers, the manufacturers of the drug. Distillers never admitted liability, but in 1968, after 5 years of legal argument, they reached an out-of-court settlement with the families who had sued.
Well, Kevin was awarded £22,000. I myself personally was awarded £2,000 and my husband about £1,800.
Looking back on it, I think we were sort of blackmailed into it, and we had to sign whether we liked it or not. You know, we were sort of driven into it, and that was it. And I thought that was disgusting, absolutely. When we had to do all the law business and things, we were young housewives, very young, didn't know a thing about the law, so we didn't have a clue. We were told they were going to give an offer, and if anybody, even one, didn't agree to that, they were going to withdraw that offer, you see. So therefore, what could we do? We were letting other parents down who needed the money badly. Well, we did too, but these seemed so desperate.
Even then, it was clear to the parents that this settlement wouldn't be enough to provide for their children's future needs.
If he was an ordinary man and he went to work, he'd be earning that. He'd earn about, what, £4,000 a year. Well, there, 20,000 is 5 years' wages. You see, so it's just his earning power for 6 years.
This original settlement didn't include the vast majority of thalidomide children. One of those who didn't benefit from this payout was Louise Mason.
I was only 22 years of age when Louise was born. I was advised by the doctors that her best chance in life lay in going into a home where she could be properly catered for so that she would be fitted with artificial limbs and receive proper training. It was a very hard decision to make.
My childhood was spent at special school for the disabled. We were all given numbers, mainly for clothes items, so they had numbers on. And I felt like a number, because there was no personal contact with the carers. I used to wear artificial legs because it was said that it would make us look normal. Actually made me look like Frankenstein. Every time somebody walked past you, you fell over. And I got countless dents in my head from where I've fallen over because I've got no way to stop myself.
Louise, like most victims, received nothing from distillers, the manufacturers of the drug, until a second legal action started in 1971.
David Mason, West End art dealer, a man who built up his business from scratch when he was earning £3 a week. Father of 4, and one of them one of the first thalidomide children.
Louise's father began this new legal battle.
And the man who alone pitted himself against the multi-million-pound might of the distillers' company.
Well, the QCs said that they'd been negotiating for a period of months with the distillers' company on behalf of all the children, and they had an offer of £3.25 million. Well, I thought this was totally horrific because putting it bluntly, in Louise's case, that equaled £2,000 per arm and per leg, which was quite disgusting.
David Mason led a campaign to get a better settlement. The thalidomide's cause was soon taken up by the media.
We decided to run week after week in the pages of the Sunday Times stories of our thalidomide children, just what it was like for those children who were then between the ages of about 10 and 12, what it was like to live with a child that had no arms and no legs, and to impose that moral pressure on the distillers, on the shareholders, on the rest of the country, really, to make everybody face up and accept the tragedy that had happened.
And the evening
David Mason focused his campaign on those who financed distillers.
It says, "Our anxiety by distillers' own bankers." And it goes on to say...
The whole mood in the city became one looking for a settlement. And from £3 million, the offer was put up to £5 million. From £5 million, it went up to 7. From £7 million, it went up to 12. Ultimately, I decided to take the fight across the Atlantic to America, where distillers made the majority of their profits. We called a boycott. We had a very high-profile press conference. Within 24 hours of calling that boycott, distillers went from 12 million to 20 million pounds.
But this final figure was plucked out of thin air.
Newspaper reporters fired the question at me, what is the right amount of compensation? And I thought for a moment and shot back and said, 20 million pounds. I wasn't in a position to say, hold it, let me go off and get some actuarial advice. The whole campaign would have lost its momentum. Distillers would have got away with it.
Under the deal that the parents signed, each family received a lump sum, but most of the £20 million was paid into a trust fund that was to provide for the lifetime needs of the children.
The trustees of the Thalidomide Trust were, from the start, given the job of looking after the thalidomide beneficiaries, in effect, for the rest of their lives. Looking after in the sense of doing our best in terms of the limited resources available to us. But we have a fund of money, which is finite, of course, but which we have to spread over the whole range of the thalidomide beneficiaries, 400 and odd, and indeed others have been added since, but also to spread over their whole lives.
I thought financially I wouldn't have any worries. I think all thalidomides thought that as well. That, you know, that I wouldn't really want for anything. I'd have enough money to live on, or set up a business, or be self-employed, or whatever. So I wasn't worried as a child. I had a very happy childhood, and there was no sort of financial worries, because I thought it was well catered for.
I imagine that to some extent the funds provided were a bit of a deal. They were not, in the end, a highly calculated sum. They were the best that could be obtained at the time.
How is that going to affect the Prime Minister's position?
When World in Action filmed Kevin in 1981, he was just about to leave college. Kevin's parents were not optimistic about his chances of finding work.
Whoever employs Kevin, if there's such a person around, would also have to employ a helper for Kevin. Well, they don't go into business for sentimental reasons, so they're not going to employ two people instead of one. I can't see it.
But Kevin exceeded all expectations. When World in Action filmed him in 1987, he'd moved into his own flat. Kevin, along with many other thalidomide children, had achieved a degree of independence few had ever expected.
I thought the first night I left home, I thought I'd cry my eyes out or whatever. But it wasn't, it was just a sense of immense excitement. That for the first time in my life, I was my own boss, if you like. You know, all the decisions were up to me and I had my own freedom.
He'd also got himself a job as a welfare worker for his local council.
Some people are shocked when they first come into the office and see the wheelchair. Well, they might come in and say, oh, I'm looking for Mr. Donnellan. I say, well, I'm Mr. Donnellan, come in, what can I do for you? And then they're quite surprised.
In 1987, Louise Mason became Louise Midas. All her life, she'd looked forward to a traditional wedding.
It was a dream come true, to go up the aisle where I walked on my artificial legs, which I haven't worn since the day. My dad was there and the family, my husband's family was there, John, and it was it was just lovely.
Since she married, Louise's family has grown, and with it, the frustrations and responsibilities.
I have 2 young children now. I suppose I feel more bitter when I had my children, more than any other time in the world. You know, when your baby's crying and you can't pick it up, when the baby needs a nappy change and you can't change it, when he's crying in pain, you know, I know it's only a few months when they need to be lifted up. You know, it's simple things like that. I find it very, very frustrating, particularly when I go to school to pick up Emma, because I can't actually get out of the car when Emma runs out. You know, she's got to either look for the car or she runs to somebody else instead of me, and I find it very, very hard to accept. I mean, I've got used to it now, but it was hard at the beginning from when she'd run out, the nanny, and I think, well, no, that should be me. Being a mother is more expensive for me because I have to have help to bring my children up in a normal way. So I need somebody to teach them to hold their knife and fork. Simple task, you think, but I hold mine differently to everyone. And I know it's an advantage for children to know how to use things differently, but before they know how to do them my way, they should learn how to do them the proper way. So I needed somebody to come and help me look after the children, and because there's obviously the caring of me involved as well, it costs more.
Today, at 33, Kevin is facing financial difficulties. 5 years ago, he lost his job with the council and has been out of work ever since.
I've got 8 O-levels and 3 A-levels, and I've written off for loads of jobs, but I haven't got anywhere. I did manage to get one interview, and the interview went very well. And then when I went out of the interview, I saw the bloke who was coming in after me, and he was like 6 foot tall in an executive suit carrying a briefcase. And he looked the real executive type, and I thought, oh, well, that's it. I haven't got the job. And people tend to see the wheelchair first rather than, you know, people when they first see you, they don't realise what you're capable of. They just imagine what you're not capable of. And that's a big barrier to get over. So I'm not very optimistic that I will get a job. I don't think I will.
Being unemployed means he's dependent on money from invalidity benefit and the allocation he receives from the trust. Kevin's financial worries have been made worse by having to move home.
It became really unsafe to live there because the communal garden borders on a cemetery, which was frequented by like loads of drug addicts. And I was burgled 3 times. And after the 3rd burglary, I thought, oh, well, forget it. So that's when I decided to look to buy a place near to the family, so the family could help out. If the family wasn't around to help me, then I would have to pay someone to do all these things, and that's where I'd be really stuck.
To afford the flat, Kevin had to borrow money from the Thalidomide Trust.
The trust said, well, OK, we'll give you this loan, but you have to pay it back with interest. And that means the money that would be eligible to me every year is now being frozen until 2001. So what that means is I've got a beautiful home and I'm very happy living here, but it means that I'm not eligible to claim any money off the trust until the mortgage is paid back. Well, I can't see the electric wheelchair lasting that long because I've had that for 5 years now. I mean, the wheelchair costs £4,000, the cheapest outdoor wheelchair. So that means, you know, I can't replace that. And it's hard to anticipate what I will need in the future because, you know, for a person who has a disability anyway, their lifestyle automatically is more expensive than anyone else. So it's really hard to anticipate, but I mean, it is a problem. It is a worry.
In recent years, I've become more dependent on the resources from the Thalidomide Trust Fund because my needs have got greater. I have 2 young children now. I live in a home independently, and the older you get, the more disabled you get, the more care you need. So I use the Thalidomide Trust for basically my care and obviously car to get around.
Nobody quite anticipated the needs that the majority of the thalidomide people would have now, because now they're facing all the other problems that are coming in that many of us face with middle age, and they face even more with the fact that they've had limbs that have been distorted, that they've had operations when they were young.
Brian Wilson is 33, married with 2 children. He was born without any legs. He used to wear artificial limbs, but the years have taken their toll, and today he has serious back problems.
Well, I've actually got scoliosis of the spine. I've now got a broken bone in the spine. Several discs have been damaged. I'm also experiencing severe numbness in the stumps, which can be a sign of early paralysis. It's just shattered my life, really.
Today, 2 neighbours are taking him 60 miles to see a spinal specialist. He needs a second opinion on whether an operation would help.
Altogether, I've seen about 6 doctors. The other doctors that I'd been to weren't prepared to commit themselves to this operation, basically because I was too young and I had my life ahead of me.
We know that a lot of people have a crack like that and that it's painless. It requires something else in most people to produce the pain in adult life. And it is possibly, in your case, the strain on your pelvis, on your spine, walking, trying to get about, that has exposed this. And without those mechanical stresses, maybe you would have got away without it, you see, like so many people must do. Now, you know, we're not looking at a cure.
No,
There's
I'm
no
not,
such thing.
I'm not expecting a cure.
We're not looking at a cure. We're looking at a reduction in pain, which you would find gratifying.
It'd be a great help to me, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been in and out of hospital all my days. Christmases I've missed. But the most of all it's hurt me is with the arthritis and not being able to pick my kids up and get them a good hug. And I miss that, you know, that means a lot to me, that's special to me. Even giving my missus a kiss. You know, I can't hug her properly. She touches my back a certain way, I hit the wall. And, you know, it's just devastating me, really. If it's as if I'm not bad enough with any legs, then it's as if God's trying to punish me for something else, you know. So, that, yeah, I feel very sad.
Brian could have the operation immediately if the money was available.
Between £8,000 and £10,000, I can have a job done tomorrow. But I just don't have £8,000 or £10,000. So it's a matter of just having to wait, as he says on the list, until maybe a bed comes up. But it could be 18 months' time. I know there's no chance in a million years that the Thalidomide Trust is going to come up with that money. I mean, OK, the Trust provides fee every year, but they don't supply that sort of money for an operation.
The lack of money to meet the growing needs of the thalidomide victims prompted Kevin Donnellan, along with other thalidomides, to approach solicitors about reopening the case.
People are amazed at the van and you see the lift going up and down and think, wow, you know, you're lucky to start having that. But it's not a luxury to me, it's an essential item to get me from A to B. These things are expensive, but they're essential. And I don't think that was taken into account when the trust was first established. I mean, when they decided the figure, nothing was taken into account, the fact that, you know, we'd all reach into adulthood. I mean, you know, they thought we'd only live a few years, but now they realise we've got normal life expectancy. And, you know, that goes hand in hand with all sorts of problems that, you know, that we face as we get older. I think the problems, you know, tend to escalate.
Hello, Kev. How are you?
Hello, fine, thank you.
Good, good. You're looking well.
Hi.
Right. Okay. He wanted to know, could we go to court, could we reopen the whole issue against distillers, or now Guinness, and could a judgment override the original agreement? Nowadays, something of that nature would warrant probably 10 times the amount. In the States, for example, in 1971, there was a case that went through the courts, and that achieved $500,000. Now, that compared to £16,000, which the average settlement was here, really is no comparison at all.
I suppose the only place that people can look is to Guinness, who of course bought distillers. And when you take over a company, I think you don't only take over, you know, the credit side of it, but you take over the liabilities as well.
In a statement, Guinness said,
"No one can fail to be profoundly moved by the plight of thalidomide victims. Guinness bought the Distillers Company in 1986, almost 30 years after a Distillers subsidiary had been involved in the distribution of thalidomide, and some 24 years after Distillers had disposed of its pharmaceuticals business. Distillers never accepted liability to thalidomide victims, but entered into court-approved settlements with them. It is not intended to interfere with these settlements, no matter how much sympathy we have for the victims."
I feel glad that I'm actually doing something, and in some ways it's following on from what our parents did. I mean, I'm very grateful for what our parents did, but I mean, you know, it was just basically a group of working class parents who were taking on big multinational companies and the law courts of the land. So I'm doing it for them as well.
I looked after Kevin from the day he was born, you know. Even now, yeah, I can't get rid of him in talk. We love him dearly. But, you know, when I look at him and I think of the huge compensation to get today just for somebody, you know, defamation of character, it does make you angry a bit, you know. It really, truly does.
But Kevin's battle has become all the more urgent. Recent financial reports into the future of the Thalidomide Trust have revealed it's running out of money. If payments keep pace with inflation, the fund will not last another 15 years.
We may well find the funds exhausted unless we take remedial actions in one way or another. Yes, we could find the funds exhausted. Part of the reason may be, and probably is, that the original funds were not adequate for the purpose for which they were designed. If we were to go on increasing the distributions by about 5% per annum, which is not unreasonable, then we probably need something like £40 million, which is a lot of money.
Thalidomide victims born in the 60s are still coming forward seeking support from the Trust. In recent years, the Trust has accepted 21 further victims. At least 15 more cases are currently being considered. But recent calculations didn't take into account the possibility of the number of beneficiaries increasing. If just a few of these cases are accepted, the Trust may not even last the 15 years predicted.
I don't think any figure really could compensate for the injury, physical, emotional, whatever, to our disabilities. But what compensation money can do is to provide equipment, adaptations, etc., services to improve our way of life. No one's ever admitted liability in this case. I mean, people think, you know, it was all settled years ago, but it certainly wasn't. I mean, we know thalidomide is caused by a drug, you know, I mean, you know, why isn't there, is there no liability in this case?
I don't want my children to grow up where they have to do this and they have to do that. They're not my carers. I didn't have children to be my carers. I had children because I wanted to have children. My husband and I wanted them, and we loved them very much.
You don't have thalidomide children, you have thalidomide families. The nightmare goes on for all of us, and it will do until the day we die.